For what length of time will you be reliant on your husband's earnings? Get independent and stop depending on Daniel before we chat if you have anything to say. Your ability to live without paying rent is astounding. You're a complete waste." They started yelling and yelling. I could take it no more. I would much prefer to be alone than remain in that mansion. I would never try to explain myself to those who couldn't understand. Quietly, I got up and told them, "I'm leaving." With no assurance, where do you believe you're heading? You won't be able to locate housing, will you? Even though my father-in-law was speaking with care, I could sense the uncomfortable contempt in his voice. In any case, I had no intention of approaching my in-laws for assistance. "Don't worry, I'll manage somehow." I said that and walked out of the home. You can call me Stacy Manning. I'm 30 years old. Being the only kid, I had a joyful existence and was fortunate to have loving parents. I admired the way my mother showered me, even if it looked ridiculous. But my parents died in an unplanned accident 10 years ago. I had severe depression at that time as a university student, feeling as though I had lost my desire to live. Daniel, my present husband, was my lifesaver at the moment. After I graduated from college, I worked for a firm where I met Daniel, who is 10 years older than me. I was moved by his kindness and slowly started to grin again. I eventually grew to like Daniel, and we started dating. My personal and professional lives have been more satisfying since I started dating Daniel, and I've started to feel content. He asked me to marry him after 3 years of dating. Throughout our relationship, I had made several trips to Daniel's parents' house and had developed a positive rapport with them. He would hear his mother remark, "Daniel has chosen you and we're happy to have you." She was always kind. I accepted his proposal because I believed what she said. I was ecstatic and doubtless at the moment, but his parents' attitude completely altered when I informed them we were getting married. She said, "You're serious about getting married. We were okay building a relationship with you because we thought you'd both eventually break up." Her abrupt turn caught Daniel and me off guard, but he went on to tell me, "Maybe they're just surprised that I'm getting married at last because I'm their only son." I frequently heard the statement, "A son is a special being to a mother." We didn't take it seriously, however. Our marriage unexpectedly worried her to the point that even though our marriage preparations went smoothly, she kept telling Daniel, "You should avoid young women. She is undoubtedly pursuing your money. You would be better off with women who are more experienced or who are closer to your age." She often told Daniel that, so I deduced that she did not approve of me and was against the marriage. However, it broke my heart to realize that I had no idea why she detested me so much. Daniel was always there to support and shield me. I made an effort to have as many in-person encounters as I could and to strengthen our friendship. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. "No need for guests," his mother said coolly when we went to his parents' house to choose the wedding guests. "In any case, you'll get divorced shortly." Daniel got to his feet and pleaded with her. "Please stop, Mom. Before we agreed to be married, you showed Stacy a great deal of concern. Why would you say something like that? Speak up, Dad." He turned to his father, who was generally quiet, for assistance. After glancing at us, his father cleared his throat and started talking. "With all due respect, I was informed that prior to meeting you, Stacy was living alone. Although we have shown her kindness out of pity, accepting her into the family is another story. Since she has been living alone, no one can attest to her moral fiber. I apologize, but marriage and love are two different things." I felt like I had been struck in the head by a blunt instrument when I heard it. Even though I was already grieving the loss of my parents, I never thought I would experience this kind of treatment. No one to vouch for Stacy's character. Daniel asked bitterly, clearly upset by those statements. "All this time I've been at her side. She is very sweet and friendly. Didn't you both say that?" After pleading with his parents, he became quiet. My heart hurt a lot too. I finally decided to break up with Daniel since I couldn't stand the situation any longer. About 6 months after we split up, I happened to run into Daniel's mother at work one day. Despite working for the same firm, Daniel and I hardly ever interacted because we were in separate divisions. I shouldn't have had the opportunity to meet her now that our relationship was finished. But she asked, "Is Stacy here?" when she arrived at my section. "Yes, I'm here," I said. "It's been a while." She walked up to me with a kind grin and said, "We need to talk," which made my face tense. "There is still some time before the day ends. I'll meet you outside the cafe." She said that and walked out of the room. In our department, many people come and go all the time, and no one pays much attention to any visitor. But the conversation she wanted to have might cause some trouble if someone were to overhear it. Unable to treat her rudely, I nodded in agreement. After finishing my work, I headed to the cafe where she was already drinking coffee alone. "You must be tired," she said with a forced smile as she saw me. "What's happening?" "Don't be so stiff. My husband and I regret the harsh things we said to you." "Really? If we were the cause for your separation with Daniel, forget about us. You too are free to decide on your marriage and everything else." I could not hide my surprise at her words. I had no idea what made her change her mind, but her intentions didn't matter to me. Since I still had feelings for Daniel, I was happy to hear those words. That night, I received a call from Daniel. It seemed he hadn't forgotten about me either, and after discussing our future together, we ended up reconciling. The marriage plans that had been extinguished before were now starting anew. This time, however, his parents accepted me quietly. After starting a new life together with Daniel, I felt the warmth of my parents-in-law and was fulfilled. However, sometime after the marriage, I overheard my mother-in-law talking on the phone. "Yes, he married that orphan. For now, everything is going smoothly." I stopped in my tracks. She was using the word orphan. It was the same term she used when she drove me out of the house. I felt bitter in her words as she used it in her phone conversation. Then, unaware that I was listening, my mother-in-law continued her conversation. "I thought an older woman would be better, but as you said, a young wife requires less care. An older woman would also increase the risks of miscarriage, so it's also reassuring in that sense. We took her in despite having been living alone, so she must take good care of us." It seemed she was talking to a friend, but it didn't matter who the other party was. I felt a deep betrayal and despair at her words. My mother-in-law had not truly accepted me. It seemed she had deemed me a usable entity based on a friend's suggestion. Even from that short conversation, I could discern the truth and felt unimaginable sadness. But Daniel believed that his parents had repented their previous actions and had accepted me. I wanted to avoid hurting him, so I decided to keep this fact to myself. Since then, I've maintained a reasonable distance with my in-laws. You can rely more on Mom for housework. That will help right away, even if it's just to change a light bulb, Daniel would say kindly, but I didn't want to be indebted to my in-laws. "Don't worry, I can handle such things myself." I would decline his suggestions politely every time. A year passed, and as we entered our second year of marriage, we were still working together and living with his parents. In the midst of our changing daily life, an incident occurred. While Daniel was away on a business trip for the first time, it was just his parents and I living together, and I had no parental home or place to return to. With no escape, I reluctantly welcomed the night. The dining table, usually surrounded by 4, was now set for 3, and the atmosphere was clearly different from usual, and it was a certain remark from my mother-in-law that accentuated the size. "Stacy, I find it difficult to ask when Daniel is around, but when are you all going to have children?" "Yes, about that. It's a blessing we haven't been able to receive yet." I had anticipated that question someday, but still I was taken aback by such a direct inquiry. You contribute nothing to the household finances, and you don't have any children. I can't see the point of having welcomed you into this house." Seeing my timid demeanor, my mother-in-law expressed her anger. I couldn't say a word back to her. In the past, childless women were called useless and could be driven out of the house. My father-in-law, despite his gentle tone, showered me with harsh words. I just kept silent and continued my meal. However, perhaps my lack of apology or rebuttal displeased her. In her anger, she stood up and threw the apron I had worn out of the window. I was just dumbfounded by her sudden action, but her bizarre behavior did not stop there. She went around the house, grabbing my belongings at random and throwing them out of the window right before my eyes. "Why do you buy such expensive aprons and kitchenware when your cooking skills are mediocre at best? Really, what do you think of Daniel's earnings?" Her action of throwing out my belongings was clearly irrational, yet she seemed completely unaware of her abnormal behavior. After discarding everything, she said with satisfaction, "We really should have never welcomed an orphan like you into our home. Your silence means your parents must have left this world without giving you proper upbringing." I had remained silent for a long time, but I could not endure those words and expressed my anger. I slammed my fork down on the table and glared sharply at her. Seeing her flinch for a moment, my father-in-law then scolded me loudly as if to back her up. "What are you doing, Stacy? Your attitude is unacceptable. Be grateful you have food to eat. That's only possible because Daniel is here." He continued, "That's right. How long will you depend on your husband's income? If you have something to say to us, become independent without relying on Daniel first, and then we'll talk. It's unbelievable that you live without paying rent. You're such a waste." In response to my defiance, both of them began to shout in anger. I could no longer bear it. I would rather live a lonely life than stay in that house. I would never try to make these uncomprehending people understand me. I quietly stood up, then said to them, "I'm leaving." That night, I started preparing to move out. I went out to the garden, picked up my belongings one by one, dusted off the mud on their surface, and packed them in my bag. My in-laws just watched me pick up my things. Their faces seemed to mock me, but they said nothing. The next day, I left the house with my belongings. "I'm leaving," I said. "I don't know where you're going, but until the divorce is official, don't cause any trouble," she said. I don't know if that was an appropriate farewell to a daughter-in-law leaving the house or not. However, instead of responding, I simply stood there silently. "Where are you going? Without a gar, you won't be able to find a place to live, won't you?" He spoke with a tone of concern, but I could feel the unpleasant disdain in his words. Regardless, I had no intention of asking them for help. "Don't worry, I'll manage somehow," I said. With those words, I left the house. Then the night came. "Stacy, where are you?" When Daniel returned from his trip, it seemed he was informed by his parents that I had left the house. He contacted me in a hurry. "Why did you leave the house? If you have any problems with me, why don't we talk about it? Let's discuss this properly." "What are you talking about?" "There's nothing wrong with you," I replied. "The truth is, I was forced out of the house by your parents." Daniel was silent after hearing my story. Obviously surprised, no doubt his parents must have told him that I left on my own accord. We decided to meet and talk. Even if I was determined to get a divorce, we should at least discuss it face to face. When we met up at the restaurant, I opened up to Daniel about the way his parents had been treating me. It must have been hard for him to accept the fact that his seemingly warm parents actually did not accept me at all. Still, he believed me. "I'm sorry I didn't notice the tough time you were going through," he said with tears in his eyes. My heart ached to see him like this. He was a victim, too. His happiness was threatened by his own parents. Not wanting to burden Daniel any further, I took out the divorce papers. But upon seeing them, Daniel immediately tore them up. "I'm going to leave that house too. I won't leave you alone. From now on, we'll walk our own path, free from my parents. We won't have to be apart anymore." I was moved by Daniel's resolve and could only nod in agreement. Hand in hand, we returned to his parents' house, where they had been waiting for us to return. "So, have you already filed for divorce?" my mother-in-law asked sarcastically upon seeing me. "Did you come back to pick up your stuff?" "Well, you're still young. You'll find someone else," my father-in-law said. His words might have been intended as encouragement, but their insensitivity was exasperating. Daniel spoke up boldly. "We're not getting divorced. I'm starting a new life with Stacy, so we're leaving this place." His parents were shocked and outraged at his declaration. "Leave? Why would you leave for someone like her?" His mom said. "How did you even think of driving Stacy out of the house? I can't understand you at all." Upon hearing her words, Daniel gasped and was at a loss for words. "I think it's inhumane to trample on everything Stacy has done for this family. I can't call such people parents." Daniel criticized them with even more vigor. Overwhelmed by his strong tone, my in-laws laughed mockingly, as if to tease him. "Haha, everything she has done, you say. I have no personal ill will towards Stacy, but to say that she's been supporting us is an exaggeration," his mother retorted. "Honestly, whether she's here or not makes no difference." "That's right. If anything, we've been taking care of her all this time. Indeed, Stacy hasn't been putting her salary into the household, has she? She's just been eating away at your earnings," my father-in-law added. As they continued to ridicule me, Daniel grew increasingly angry with every word. "What are you talking about? Who's been spending Stacy's savings?" "Daniel." I tried to stop him, but he wouldn't be stopped. "The living expenses here have all been covered by Stacy. I've been saving my income for the future, to be used when we would need to take care of you both," Daniel said. "Stacy said this arrangement would make you both happy." He repeated the words I had said at the beginning of our marriage. She promised to take on all the living expenses, and it's thanks to her that we have what we do now. "How can you say such things?" he emphasized. At this, my parents-in-law looked at each other as if they couldn't believe it. His mother retorted, "Oh, that can't be true. I heard that Stacy has been saving all her salary." "Furthermore," his father said, "you're saying we can live on her salary alone. That's ridiculous. Euless, you've been poisoned by Stacy's words and become a pathetic son." They were screaming in frustration. I couldn't help but feel angry at those words. "What Daniel's saying is true," I said. "I kept silent out of consideration for the two of you, but I cannot stand by while he is made out to be the villain." The truth is, the living expenses were being managed from my parents' inheritance. My father owned a lot of real estate, so even now we still have rental income coming in. I've been using those funds for our living expenses. It seemed that my in-laws were at a loss for words at this revelation. Their faces turned pale, their mouths agape. They seemed to be struggling with how to cover up their own blunder. "So that's how it was. We didn't understand anything." My mother-in-law tried to laugh it off with a desperate smile toward me. However, that contrived smile was distasteful to me. I thought her angry expression earlier was better than her hideous smile. However, there will be no need for that from now on. Daniel and I will leave here, so you two should just take care of yourselves. With that, as we tried to leave after saying what we wanted to, my father-in-law dropped to his knees to stop us. However, Daniel coldly rejected his father and said, "I had hoped that you both would change. This is truly sad." Afterward, I led Daniel to our home. The house I moved into is also one of the properties I inherited from my father. The luxurious house, worth $3 million, had been rented out to a famous person overseas until recently. The celebrity had just finished her activities in the U.S. and returned home, and the home cleaning was completed, making it ready for us to move in right away. The day I was driven out by my in-laws, I decided to live in this house and obtained the keys from the real estate agent. I had heard about it, but it really is a wonderful house. This was Daniel's first time visiting, and he was very pleased. Then we started a happy life together. However, my in-laws somehow found our address and one day suddenly visited us. Stacy, when I got home, there was my mother-in-law calling my name. I recognized her immediately, but I had no time to hide. The bad weather and rain impaired visibility, and although she called my name, it took me a while to locate her. Meanwhile, they hurriedly approached me. "Mother, I'm so glad. I was searching around here, thinking it must be near." It seemed they had made it this far relying on that dress, but they couldn't find the actual house. But more than their appearance, I was concerned about the luggage they carried. My mother-in-law had a large tote bag, and my father-in-law carried a suitcase. Noticing my gaze fixed on their luggage, my mother-in-law looked down at her tote bag. "Oh, actually, we just got back from a trip and bought some souvenirs." Could that really be the case? As I continued to stare silently at them, both of them started speaking apologetically. "We truly regret our actions. That's why we want to apologize properly again," my father-in-law also apologized. Whether their attitudes were sincere or not, I couldn't be harsh to people who were apologizing in the rain, carrying heavy luggage. The place had a lot of traffic, and I preferred to talk to them somewhere more private. "Let's talk inside," I said. Reluctantly, I led them into my home. "This is your house. This big house." My mother-in-law was astonished by the size of the house. My father-in-law, too, was looking around with keen eyes. As I prepared coffee and urged them to sit, my mother-in-law, in high spirits, began opening the doors of the rooms one after another, saying, "Wait a minute. What are these rooms? With so many rooms, we could live here too." The modest demeanor they had shown outside had vanished, and there they were, the same presumptuous in-laws as before. I was confused, but then Daniel came home. As soon as he noticed his parents, he raised his voice, "Why are you two here?" and approached them. "Daniel, don't be so angry. We just came to talk," my mother-in-law said. "There's nothing to talk about. Please leave." "But you're our son, aren't you? We can live together, can't we?" When my mother-in-law began to say such things, I was disappointed. The apology was nothing but a lie from the beginning. My in-laws came seeking to live with us. I had been deceived by their act and let them into the house too easily. Disappointed in my own carelessness, I looked at Daniel. The three were discussing in the hallway away from the rooms in the house. Feeling that I was burdening Daniel once again, I suddenly grabbed the large tote bag my mother-in-law brought, slipped through them, headed to the front door, and threw it out into the rain. "What are you doing?" Their argument stopped abruptly at my sudden action. Then I also threw out the suitcase my father-in-law carried. "How dare you throw out people's luggage? Unbelievable." My father-in-law's face turned red with anger, and they hurried out into the rain to retrieve their luggage. "I have had my belongings thrown away by you before." My mother-in-law looked surprised at my words, as if remembering her actions. Furthermore, despite being Daniel's wife, I was also driven out of the house. I would like to ask, what kind of nerve you have to want to live with us? That's why we came to apologize for that. No need for apologies. I can no longer think of you two as family. Please do not interfere with us from now on. She then responded angrily, "Daniel is my son. I won't let someone like you take him away." Her insistence was strong, but such a claim would not reach Daniel. "Well, that's it then," Daniel said with a smile, and then closed and locked the front door. His parents, wet from the rain, seemed to have no choice but to return to their own house that day. However, they did not give up and visited us every day. Since Daniel and I were at work during the day, They used this to their advantage and checked around the house for any open windows. I knew this because they had entered through a bathroom window that I had forgotten to close. A passerby had seen them and thankfully called the police. We also had a contract with a security company, so Daniel was immediately notified as the contract holder. The security company contacted me. "It seems there's an intruder at home." Daniel immediately informed me, and we both rushed home. When we arrived, there were already police cars and security company vehicles parked, and many onlookers. We are not thieves. In the midst of it all, there was my mother-in-law being led out by the police. Daniel and I were just dismayed at the sight of her resisting and raising her voice. "Ah, Daniel, tell the police we are not suspicious people," my mother-in-law called out to Daniel upon seeing us. The police approached us and asked, "Are you the owners of the house? Do you know this person?" Daniel then deliberately answered in a loud voice, "Yes, I am the owner of the house. I would like you to thoroughly investigate what intentions this person had for entering." My mother-in-law's expression changed to one of desperation when he responded. The policeman didn't get confirmation from Daniel that he knew her. The policeman responded, then escorted my mother-in-law to the patrol car. Daniel didn't try to look at my father-in-law, who followed without making eye contact with us. After a while, the cops removed them both and placed them in different patrol vehicles. They said they only intended to sleep in the house and didn't steal anything. Even though Daniel was trembling with rage, I made the decision to take advantage of the situation to make sure we would never interact with them again and consented to drop the complaint. Since then, my in-laws have not visited our home as promised. We might be able to live in peace one day. While working part-time at the grocery, I witnessed my father-in-law receiving a reprimand from an elderly woman. It appears that they needed to work in order to make ends meet. I gave a little grin and quietly walked away. Daniel started laughing when I told him about it when I came home. Dad may have had a better life if he hadn't always followed Mom's advice. It's disheartening to observe that he keeps sacrificing himself for her. Yes, there is some truth in what Daniel says. My father-in-law has never had a strong will and has always complied with my mother-in-law's requests. The present issue was probably caused by this. Additionally, they are both being ostracized now because the break-in has turned into local rumors. The only thing that Mom had going for her was her lovely exterior, and it's gone now. I do have some sympathy for her. Daniel told me about her present predicament, which she reportedly found out about via a friend. He also detailed all of the abuse I had received from my in-laws to that buddy. It's likely that word will get out quickly about the abuse you endured. Those two are your family, but it's their last day. Are you truly comfortable with this? I asked Daniel, a little worried. Daniel's expression changed from one of astonishment to a soft grin, and he replied, "You are my only family, Stacy." My eyes filled with tears at those words. But I'm not the only member of Daniel's family. It's not just me, I assured him, putting my palm on my tummy. Another one is out there. What? I discovered that I am 3 months pregnant when I visited the hospital today. Daniel grinned in a way I had never seen him smile before, and his eyes expanded. I had the most lovely family of my life after becoming an orphan. In order for my parents in heaven to be at peace forever, I'm resolved to treasure this miracle and build a joyful family life.